Alright, so today let's talk about how to get started with film photography, 35mm.
Film photography has seen a major comeback in recent years. Many people, myself included, are rediscovering its unique charm and artistic possibilities. I shoot both digital and film in my daily life, and I believe they each have their place. Digital is faster and more cost-effective in many ways, but for me, it's just too difficult to resist the vintage color tone and the tactile experience of shooting film. However, the limited shots per roll, fixed ISO, lack of instant feedback, and the cost of film and development can make film photography feel intimidating. I've had my share of trials and errors figuring out how to embrace creativity within these limitations. Today, I want to share what I've learned along the way, keeping it simple and organized so that you can get more confidence before getting started. We will cover camera, film, loading the film, shooting and exposing, developing, film storage, and some beginner tips to help you take better film pictures. Let's get started. Everything in photography begins with a camera.
If you are new to 35mm film photography, there are three main types of camera to consider: point and shoot, SLR, rangefinder. Here are all of my 35mm film cameras: Nikon FE2, Olympus OM2, and Canon EOS 3, so all of which are SLRs. Because if you're like me and already have some experience with digital photography, especially with the SLRs, then you will probably find it more comfortable to start using an SLR because the mechanisms behind them are pretty much the same.
SLRs use a mirror to reflect the image from the lens into the viewfinder. When you take a photo, the mirror flips up and the image is captured on film, showing you exactly what the lens sees.
Compared to point and shoots and rangefinders, I prefer SLRs because they are versatile. They're great for both everyday photography and professional work.
Most SLRs come with a standard 50mm lens, which is a fantastic starting point. Its focal length closely matches the field of view of the human eyes. Point and shoot cameras are simple, often plastic, and have limited functionality, which makes them affordable. Their automatic operation makes them incredibly easy to use. They are lightweight, unobtrusive, and perfect for casual, everyday photography. Rangefinders use a separate viewfinder and a unique focusing mechanism that combines two images into one. They are lightweight and quiet, making them ideal for street photography. Most rangefinders come with a prime lens, typically 35mm or 50mm. However, they offer fewer lens options, especially for zoom lenses.
I would say each type of film camera has its own pros and cons. If you can visit a local camera store to try them out and get a sense of what feels right for you. Honestly, at the end of the day, you will find the camera itself isn't as important as the lens you use, the film stock you choose, and most importantly, the way you see the world. Just find a camera that feels right in your hands and it will do the job just fine.
Choosing a film stock can feel overwhelming for beginners because there are so many options out there.
To start, there are two main things to check on the packaging before deciding. First, make sure you are buying the correct format. I have two boxes of Actor 100 in my hands. This one, which labeled 120, is for medium format cameras, while the other one, the smaller one, is for 35mm film cameras. So choosing the correct format to match your camera is essential. Next, check the ISO/exposure value on the film.
Most film canisters display the name of the film and a prominent number next to it. For instance, Ultramax 400 is designed to be shot with your camera's ISO set to 400. In general, higher ISO numbers are better for low light, but will also introduce more grain into your photos.
Beyond format and ISO, which are the two most important things, the film can be divided into 4 types: color negative, slide, black and white, motion picture film. I highly recommend that beginners start with color negative film because it's the most forgiving.
Think of a film stock as the picture profile you would select on a digital camera. Its characteristics include dynamic range, tonal range, color depths, and the overall tone if you can get. Also, a little tip I've picked up is that the packaging of a film can often hint at its color tone. For example, Kodak films, known for their warm tones, always come in orange boxes. Fujifilm's green packaging reflects its emphasis on greens, while CineStill's blue packaging highlights its unique look.
When it comes to loading the film, the point-and-shoot cameras are incredibly simple compared to SLRs and the rangefinders. I don't have a point-and-shoot at hand, but I can tell it's just to insert a film, close the back, and then the camera takes care of the rest. With SLRs and rangefinders, the film loading process depends on the camera model and can be a bit more hands-on.
For instance, my Canon US3 makes loading film as easy as a point-and-shoot. You just insert a film, close the back, turn it on, and it automatically loads, setting the counter to 1. Simple. The Olympus OM2N and Nikon FE2, on the other hand, require a more traditional hands-on approach.
Let me show you how I load the film into this camera so you can get a sense of how many typical film cameras operate.
First, you may want to start by setting the camera to manual mode, which helps make advancing the film easier later. Open the back of the camera by pulling up the rewind knob to release the latch. Then pull the knob up a little more to insert your film canister, with a small bump facing down. Push the knob back down to lock the film in place. Next, take the leader of the film and thread it into one of the slots on the right-hand spool. Then use the lever to advance the film slightly. You may need to fire the shutter to advance it further if needed. Make sure the sprockets align perfectly with the holes along the film's edges. This step is crucial for proper advancement. When everything looks good, close the back of the camera securely and press the rewind knob fully down. To check if the film is loaded properly, use the lever to advance it and see if the rewind knob spins. If it does, you're all set. If not, reopen the back and check if there's anything wrong. Advance the film until the picture counter reaches 1, and then you're ready to shoot.
One important note: once the film is loaded, don't open the back until you have finished a roll and rewound it. Opening it too early will expose your film to light and ruin your photos. So once your film is loaded, you're almost ready to shoot your first roll of film. Almost, not quite. There are 2 important things to check before you're heading out.
First, make sure your camera is set to the correct ISO.
Some cameras like point-and-shoots handle this automatically, so you don't need to worry about it. But others, like my Olympus OM2N, you need to set it manually.
Next, check if your camera has batteries. If the camera needs batteries to operate, make sure they're installed correctly.
Once everything is ready, it's time for the most exciting part, shooting.
Take your camera anywhere and capture beautiful moments, from big milestones to everyday randomness. Photograph the people you love and document life as you see it. As you shoot, one key thing to focus on is getting the exposure right.
Many cameras have built-in light meters to help you expose properly, but since most film cameras are aged, the light meter might not be accurate. So what I like to do is use the very first roll of film to test the internal light meter and the other functionalities of the camera and see if they're working as expected. Another more reliable and less costing option is using an external light meter, like a light meter app.
I use a free app called Light Meter. It's intuitive and easy to use. Just set the ISO and aperture and it will calculate a shutter speed for you. A quick tip on shutter speed. If you are not intentionally going for a long exposure, I recommend using a shutter speed faster than the safe shutter speed. Otherwise, your photo may end up blurry due to the camera shake. So, what is a safe shutter speed? It's the minimum shutter speed you can use while hand-holding a camera to avoid motion blur caused by small hand movements. You can calculate it using the reciprocal rule. Safe shutter speed equals to 1 divided by focal length of a second. For example, with a 50mm lens, your safe shutter speed would be 1/50th of a second or faster. For an 85mm lens, you'd want a 1/100th of a second or faster. If you find yourself in a situation where you can't use a shutter speed faster than the safe limit, like shooting in a low light, even after setting your aperture to its widest, your option might be either using a tripod to stabilize your camera and compensate for the slower shutter speed, or adding lighting if you have access to it, to brighten the scene and allow for faster shutter speeds. One more tip for beginners. Unlike digital, film has a wide dynamic range and is more forgiving of overexposure than underexposure. To ensure a safety buffer for metering errors, it's common to overexpose by one stop. For instance, setting your camera's ISO to 320 when shooting 400 ISO film. This approach works well for color negative and black and white films. There are plenty of YouTube videos get you through developing and scanning film yourself. It can be a lot of fun and offer great opportunities for creative expression, but it can also be time-consuming. Personally, I prefer not to invest too much time in them. If you, like me, prefer to send your film to a lab for developing and scanning, I recommend experimenting with a few labs at first. This helps you compare the quality and style between labs and find one that suits your preferences. Proper storage is essential to keep your film in great condition. Store your film in a cool, dry place away from direct sunlight. For long-term preservation, keep unused rolls in their original packaging and refrigerate them to extend their shelf life past the expiration date. But let the film return to room temperature before loading it into your camera to avoid condensation. For the developed films, I usually get them back from the lab and archive them. I cut, sleeve, label, and organize all of them in case I want to get some of them rescanned for some reason. But if you don't need that, you can just tell the lab to throw them. Finally, here's a bit of unconventional advice for beginners. Start with digital. Yep, you heard it right. The basics of photography are the same whether you're shooting digital or film. Grab a DSLR. It doesn't have to be fancy. A cheap, old, used one works perfectly, and set it to manual. The main difference with film is that you can't adjust the ISO on the fly. Set it to a typical film ISO like 200 or 400 and leave it there. Practice adjusting shutter speed and aperture for proper exposure. Rely on the built-in meter and use manual focus. The best part, you can get instant feedback on your shots without waiting for the film to be processed and without spending extra money on mistakes. Once you have mastered the basics, it's easy to transfer those skills to film. Alright, that's pretty much I want to share today, and if you have any questions, leave me a comment and I will try my best to reply. Happy shooting!